I grew up in an area in South Africa that is a farmland area, Polokwane, and there is some issues up there. Obviously, my dad was a property developer as well as a part-time farmer, and yeah, some of these buddy farmers got killed. The farm is still going. My brothers run it, but it's a constant battle with farms they're trying to burn the farms down to chase you away. So it is a concern to try and make a living as a farmer. And at the end, without farmers, there's no food on the plate. So we need the farmers to produce the food.
Farming, right? He wouldn't even want to do what you're doing, right? They love farming. They don't want to leave. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, and food and fresh water is the most important thing in life. Without those two things, you can't survive.
How is the water there?
The water is great. Obviously, all the water comes out of the borehole, out of ground for us down there. But yeah, it is a battle to get the water out sometimes when all the equipment gets stolen all the time that you're trying to get the water out.
So does your family and your brother, do they feel safe on the farm?
They live behind electric fences, try and be at night safe. But it is constant whenever you leave that something could happen. And
there's nowhere to live.
Both of them has been attacked in their houses. My mom's been attacked in her house when she was 80. So it is difficult.
That's what you call an ambush, ladies and gentlemen. that South African golfer ambushed our president, ambushed his own president, actually, Cyril Ramaphosa, with that whole exchange, which we'll talk about in a second. But first, welcome everyone to the Rescue Michigan Sunday night live stream. And with us tonight, we have a special guest, Mr. Kevin Rinke, who you may recall just a few years ago ran for governor of Michigan. And he's going to kind of chat with us tonight, talking about some of the news this week. So, Kevin, welcome. Good to have you on the show. And,
Adam, thanks. Patty, it's good to see you as well.
You too.
I see Mark is in chat as well, and some folks also tuning in on Rumble as well as X and Facebook and YouTube. So welcome everyone. Thank you guys for joining us. But I guess first we should kind of talk about this incident. So let's play the clip of what happened in the White House this week, which there's stuff to talk about here with South Africa. But to me, the thing that stands out about this whole incident is it's just this perfect example of the total dishonesty of the mass media, because they categorically came out after this exchange happened and said that Trump had ambushed the president of South Africa. In fact, here's a little compilation that Libs of TikTok put together. This is a 1 minute clip. Here we go.
To the dramatic scene in the Oval Office today, the tense confrontation, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
Up next, another Oval Office meltdown, President Trump ambushing the president of South Africa.
President Trump is being accused of conducting something of a diplomatic ambush of South Africa's president in the Oval Office.
To be with you, I'm Katie Tur. President Trump orchestrated another Oval Office ambush today.
Today, Donald Trump meeting with the president of South Africa and attempting to ambush and humiliate that leader.
Zelensky territory, where essentially he was a bit ambushed inside the Oval Office.
Felt like an ambush in there, kind of like the President Zelensky meeting in the Oval Office.
This was an ambush. It was orchestrated.
Cyril Ramaphosa brought his best diplomatic self to this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush.
What started as, to some degree, an ambush.
Well, Katie, it was an ambush.
Ambush.
Ambushed.
Ambush.
An ambush.
Ambushing.
Ambushed inside the Oval Office.
Now, last time I checked, an ambush is when someone conducts a surprise attack on a victim, right? That's the ambusher is the one that, initiated the subterfuge, the misconduct. And yet this all started with this question from a reporter who, I'm going to play the clip. It's real short, 30 seconds, has a distinct South African accent, because they were just talking about the economy and what Trump could do for South Africa and all this other stuff. And then this is what sets off the whole exchange. This is what actually happened.
President Assange, what will it take for you to be convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa?
Well, I can answer that for the president. It's for him. No, seriously.
I'd rather have him answer.
Yeah, I'd rather answer that. It will be.
Our president will respond to you.
Yeah, let me-
Thank you, Mr. President.
It will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends.
So, to recap, the South African reporter says, what's it going to take, Mr. Trump, for you not to believe a genocide is happening in South Africa? To which the South African president himself says, let me take that question. And then proceeds to answer himself and says, Trump needs to just listen to us more. He needs to listen to us more.
Yeah, just listen to what we say. Yeah. Exactly.
And then his own guest, part of his own entourage, comes out and says, well, actually, yeah, it's terrible. My whole family has been terrorized all the time. My 80-year-old mother just got attacked at her home. This happens all the time. So who ambushed whom here? It sounds like.
Were the two golfers part of the South African entourage? Or
I
did
think
President
so.
Trump invite them in himself?
I'm not entirely sure. I think they're from South Africa. I think they must have traveled with the entourage. I think. I could be wrong about that. But
Matt wrote a comment in the
Trump was ready though.
Yes, Retiev? I can't. Yeah. Okay.
Retiev Goosen, a world-class golfer, national hero. There's no chance the South African president didn't know who he was. No chance that Trump didn't either.
Oh yeah, both of them I'm sure knew who he was.
Yeah.
The other one, if I'm not mistaken, was Ernie Els, who was also, if I'm not mistaken, from South Africa.
Yeah. Mark says, I thought we were going to talk about Michigan politics this evening. We'll get to it, Mark. We have a cold open clip that has a story behind it we have to talk about because that was the big story this
We're
week.
changing the name to Rescue Trump.
Yeah. Hey, I was going to do a stream this week talking about some things that Trump has done that I'm not all that happy about. And I had a bunch of technical difficulties. I managed to yammer into the wind for 10 full minutes before someone told me my microphone was off. So, deleting it, I have to get back to that one of these days. But not for tonight. That's for another night. The other big story this week, though, and we can get to some Michigan stuff now, is this huge story that Jocelyn Benson has now been held in contempt of the state house for simply refusing to turn over documents. She has literally disobeyed a lawful subpoena for election training materials, which is amazing because, well, first off, because these are documents that members of the public, when they become election workers, which happens to a lot of people, happened to me once, in fact, I got a story about that, have access to. And somehow this is, I guess, privilege, she says. So here's the story. Benson has simply said that this is protected information. Let me see if they have the story here, the quote from Benson. I don't see the quote from Benson in this article, but she claims that these election materials are privileged and that she therefore cannot disclose them to the public, which is not actually her decision. You know, that's like when a court subpoenas you, you don't get to say no. It doesn't work that way.
So the citizens of the state can't read the laws that affect them in the state? That's privilege? That doesn't sound like a democracy to me. Or a republic to me.
It's amazing. Benson has had, I've lost even track of how many court cases that she has lost
11.
over the lack of transparency.
11 now? Oh my God.
At least that many. And that's not even counting. I mean, that's not counting everything. So I don't know if you've heard this story, Kevin, but in 2020, I became a poll worker in the city of Detroit, and they literally trained us to use COVID rules to impede poll challengers. And as it happened, I was audio recording the entire training. I got everything they said on tape. So we filed a lawsuit against Jocelyn Benson about this and said you can't use, saying basically you have to change your policies. You're not allowed to use COVID rules to impede poll challengers. And the morning of the hearing in the Court of Claims, she settles out of court and just says, "I'm going to change the policy. I'll tell the commission, the county clerks, we're not going to do this anymore." And so that was the end of the lawsuit because she settled out of court and she just disobeyed the order. She just never did any of it.
Yeah.
So even though she actually technically didn't lose that one because she just bent over at the last minute, she just broke her own rules and nobody held her in contempt of court. It was just another outrage out of many.
But, you know, it's interesting because contempt at that level is not something that imprisons people. It's a whole different set of rules. And you could refer to state prosecutors, but they would have to elect to prosecute. And somehow I think that with Dana Nessel sitting in the chair, the likelihood of her prosecuting Jocelyn Benson is very, very low.
Yeah, so much for that nobody is above the law stuff. That was the other thing, was that Vessel this week just came out and just said, I'm going to find the news about this. Yeah, actually, she did break campaign finance law, but you know what? That's okay. No, it's just no big deal. Here's the news story. Benson broke campaign and finance law, no penalty. The Attorney General claims she's powerless under the state statute to administer punishment. Oh, that's weird. There's no punishment whatsoever. Says, yeah, she disobeyed the Michigan Campaign Finance Act. Now, it's funny because Benson herself has thrown people off the ballot for violations of the Michigan Campaign Finance Act.
And chosen, by the way, not to throw certain people off the ballot for the same violation.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Things that ordinarily, when I say ordinarily, like until recently, we thought no matter which party was in charge, there was a line you couldn't cross of completely, on the face of it, partisan hackery and just willful neglect of duty for the purpose of partisan benefit. That normally you would think that's just wildly unethical. Even if we wouldn't get thrown in jail for this stuff, the media wouldn't let us get away with it. But the media clearly does. They clearly do. They let them get away with anything. I mean, this is the Midwesterner. It's a very right-leaning news source. Nobody else is reporting this kind of stuff.
Right. Oh, there's the 400 jobs leaving from Mercedes. Over to the right, Mercedes Finance.
Mercedes Finance decided to close their office. It was located in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And over in Farmington Hills, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah. The Midwesterner is great news outlet for pretty much everything in Michigan. We need more of them because it's amazing. The Detroit News, Detroit Free Press, the way they cover these stories is just bizarre. In fact, I wish we had Matt Matt. You're welcome to jump in the stream tonight if you're on there, because you had we covered this last week. We had an amazing story with Craig Mauger getting into a Twitter fight with Matt. Just
Matt got into
Detroit News, all they do is run news releases.
He got into one.
Craig's got a lot of Twitter fights.
Yeah.
He unbiased reporting at its finest, right, Craig?
Yeah. I mean, the lesson of all this too is that, no matter how much you dislike the mainstream media, it's not enough, because they go beyond just editorial bias to the point of just anything we don't like, we won't report about. Anything that we have to report about will completely turn things upside down. Like the story with Trump ambushing the president of South Africa. It's a complete, and all, of course, to cover the fact there really is persecution going on, and that Trump has every right to be giving these people refugee status, as opposed to the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that Joe Biden gave refugee status to, who had no plausible claim to that status whatsoever.
Right. Well, we don't know who was actually doing that. It probably wasn't Biden, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but you know what? If you get behind the wheel of a car and you're hammered, you know what? That was being reckless.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Biden chose to run for president. He wanted to. He kept the act going.
Yeah.
He never stopped and said, "No, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. I need to resign."
I think the key with the media that everybody needs to consider is when they call editorials news. That's what's so confusing, because news is simply supposed to be who, what, where, when, how, and why.
Yeah.
And that has been disguised and covered up. And people think that when Mauger's expressing his editorial views that they are factual. And with today's modern technology, it gets spread all over that these are facts, and they are not facts, they're opinions.
Yep.
Yeah, and the way they'll say things like they'll inject little commentary and often false information into the news stories. Like they'll just say Trump asserted without evidence, yada yada yada, as if therefore evidence does not exist in this universe, which normally that would be something any editor would say. You could never say anything like that about anybody, because that's not how you report what somebody said. You would say so and so contended this, period. And if they don't cite something, you don't have to say that, because your job is not to do their homework for them. But this is the way the news has this is what they have turned into. And it's just absolutely it's aggravating. It's aggravating that people don't notice it, that people don't cancel their subscriptions.
Unfortunately though, let's face it, these contempt charges are ceremonial at best. It's
Yeah.
unlikely that they're going to be prosecuted. If they go to a civil court, it's unlikely that that court would say that the appearance of political influencing might exist because Benson is running for governor. And so really all it is pressure. And the people of Michigan need to understand, because sometimes, man, contempt of court, you think that they're going to grab him and throw him in jail. That's not the case. It could take years and tens of millions of dollars to just simply say that she was in contempt. And the taxpayers in Michigan need to say, is that good use of their money as well? In no way am I implying that she shouldn't comply with the law and the transparency that seems so simple here.
And yet though, you're right. You would think people wouldn't be ever thrown in jail for contempt of a legislative body, but Steve Bannon was, Peter Navarro was. You know, the rules. The Democrats will break any norm, knowing that we wouldn't sink to their level, or if we would, then they'll just go to the next thing. But
what it takes is Democrat with Democrat to do that. You know, if there wasn't a partisan slate in place, in the particular case with Bannon that you were talking about, obviously you've got an attorney general that's Democrat. And so he is willing to enforce the Democrats who were in control at the time, holding him in contempt. In Michigan, because we have a Democrat who would be required to enforce it, she's going to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's partisanship instead of following the law. And partisanship is really dangerous. It's hurting Michigan tremendously.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the Republicans really need to up their game as far as calling out the extremism of how the Democrats have been abusing the entire system. The fact that Nessel will just willfully ignore any crimes committed by any Democrats, period, is just absolutely beyond the pale. But the reality is we've come to expect this, that nobody ever expects the Attorney General to follow the facts and apply the law whenever there's any kind of political motivation involved whatsoever. And, you know, like there was the case. So one of the precedent breaking cases, and again, they'll break precedent to do things. So for example, there was the Oxford shooting. And for the first time ever, the parents were criminally prosecuted for the crimes of their child. But there will never be criminal prosecutions for any of the thousands and thousands of inner city murders committed by people age 17 of their parents. That'd be crazy. You couldn't possibly do that. But yet in this one case, politically, because it was expedient in Oakland County, Michigan, they did it. And those parents are in jail right now. And the court, and none of the courts will stop it. Because the Supreme Court is controlled by Democrats, the Court of Appeals is controlled by Democrats, and therefore they'll all go along with it.
Potentially over time, it could be overturned, but it will take 10, 12, 14 years. And what a sacrifice. If you are the person that's in jail to have to go through that process.
Yeah, it's unreal. I mean, we were looking at the, you know, this officer, Christopher Schur, was facing potentially life in prison. And thank God that we had a hung jury. It was either 10-2 or 11-1, depending on who you believe, in favor of acquittal. And so just earlier this week, the prosecutor said he wouldn't retry the case. Thankfully. I do have a whole episode about this past Wednesday. But you know, every time this happens, like there's a real risk someone's going to go to jail for the rest of their life over politics, because this was a politically motivated case. And it is, I think, you know, I made this pitch in 2022 that the line that Republicans need to have, especially when you're dealing with like legislative open seats and the Democrats running as I'm just a nice guy, I'm a moderate, is every Democrat will vote the same way every time, whether it's repealing right to work or whether it was, whether it was the red flag legislation, whether it was all the abortion bans the abortion legal up until and perhaps even after the moment of birth bills that they passed last year. Every single Democrat will vote the same way every single time. There was just this bill this week.
Are you keeping up your partisan ranking scores on your page, Adam?
It's outdated. It's very outdated. But it's also been very different this year, I've noticed, because with the Republicans in charge in the House, now they're all voting very differently, because now that the Republicans are only putting up bills, almost only putting up bills that Republicans will pass, now Democrats will start voting no to bolster their independent credentials and so on and so forth. But yeah, so here,
I noticed that, yeah.
But here's another example that just happened this week. House approves a bill to prohibit biological males from participating in women's sports, girls and women's sports. Every single Democrat voted against it. Every single Democrat supports biological males in women's sports. Every single Democrat supports open borders. Every single Democrat supports Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, a MS-13 gang member, being brought back into the United States. Every one of them does. And every once in a while, the Democrat will try to say that, oh, I'm not me. I'm a moderate. I'm an independent. I'm just a nice guy. And it's like, well, if that's true, then why are you in the Democrat Party? Because every single one of your colleagues votes this way every single time. Whenever there's an issue of controversy, that's what always inevitably happens. So here's the story from, I'm going to go back to the story actually, because this is a great example. This is something that just a few years ago, Republicans would have been afraid to do. Like taxes, cutting spending, maybe law and order stuff. Republicans, those are easy issues for them. But all the social conservative stuff, very, very tough. But the times have changed because Democrats they've gone so overboard. It's not just like traditional marriage anymore. It's not, oh, we just want to let gay people get married. No, now it's, we can take your child away if you don't recognize the gender that we've taught them to think that they are. And I think people are starting to have enough of this. So cheers to the Republicans for...
You hope it's not too late.
Yeah.
Actually, you hope it's not too late.
Well, I have a family member who is transgender, and well, let's just say she's had a tough life, and there's no coming back from it, not easily. It does harm people, and it harms a lot of people. I've met someone at I was at the Milan Fair a couple of years ago, which, by the way, I'm going to be having a table at this coming weekend, and I ran into a girl who was in high school, and she said, yeah, I am detransitioning. My parents are high-level employees at the University of Michigan, and when I was kind of a tomboy, they told me, "Oh, you're probably really a boy," and they were very much encouraging me to transition to become a boy. And then when I just told them, I this doesn't feel right to me. I don't want to be. I want to go back to being a girl again. No, that's not right. Who's telling you this? They were second guessing me all of a sudden, and they really wanted to stop me from detransitioning. Like, this is what's happening like all over the country. And
yeah, it's like Munchausen's. These parents want the attention of having a kid that's going through something like that.
I think that is part of it. I think sometimes it comes from the teachers, but sometimes it does from the parents too. And I don't know. It's sad, but the issue here, and the thing that I think has given the Republican strength to confront this issue, is that they're pitting these transgenders against girls. And Title IX was something that the Democrats had fought for decades ago, and now they're just throwing this all in the garbage. Now it's just like, oh well, yeah, we have women's sports, but men can play them if they just identify as women. It's like, oh well, I guess women won't have any track records anymore then, or swimming records, or weightlifting records. Mark says, I was on the floor of the House that day when the House did this. I was on the floor. Guest of Rep. DeSanta. Oh, that sounds fun. That sounds like a lot of fun, Mark. Jim DeSanta, I got to meet when we did the rally in Grand Rapids for officers. Sure, he's a great guy.
He's a great dude. A lot of fun.
Looking forward to seeing him this weekend too. This Saturday, by the way, coming up. I'll take this moment to plug an event. If you guys haven't already gotten your tickets, Laura Perry is running for State House, and she is having her kickoff event. Here, let me put this up on the screen. This Saturday in Dundee, Michigan. And the event is almost sold out, but we do have a couple of seats left at the Washtenaw County's table. So you can get a ticket if you can get one through her, great. Or go to WashtenaWGOPclub.com and get them there too. But let me see if I can make this full. Can I make this image full screen? This is It's chopped off here. Let me go back over here. It's got Senator Jonathan Lindsay is emceeing the event. I've also heard House Speaker Eric Nesbitt's going to be there. Joe Bellino, Senator's going to be there. Jim DeSanta, Will Bruck, and Jamie Thompson, all state reps, will be there. And also Dale Benicki, who ran for this seat 2 years ago, is going to be there too. So that's this Saturday at 5 p.m. That's in Dundee, Michigan. So if you want to get tickets to that, go to votelauraperry.com or WashingtonGOPClub.com.
So should we get a ticket and then? Okay, that's what I was wondering. So buy a ticket through her or through the club. And
yeah,
then,
I've heard she's only got like a dozen tickets left. They've got like 300 seats sold, like almost 300 seats
that's
sold.
amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. Yeah. So there you go. But anyway, Jim DeSantis going to be
Yeah,
there.
that seat, Kevin, the previous in 24 was lost by 300 votes, 400 votes. It was like a fraction of 1%. So it's like
The Democrats spent millions trying to save that seat too.
Yeah. Van Buren, Sumter, Monroe County, Washtenaw County. It touches 4 counties actually. These districts are kind of crazy.
Yeah. In 2020, the seat went exactly 50-50 between Trump and Biden. I have to look, but I'm sure Trump won it this time. But the Democrats spent like millions of dollars in that race. So hopefully we'll pick it up again this coming year. But anyway, so getting back to this transgender stuff. This is clearly proven to be a losing issue for the Democrats because it's not just about tolerance anymore. It's about invading women's spaces, and I think enough parents have had enough of this. They've had enough of being told what to think, being told how to raise their children, and being told that their women can't that their girls can't play sports separated from the boys. And I think the fact that Republicans are starting to stand up on this is a huge breakthrough because they weren't doing this a few years ago.
I don't even see why it should be a debate. We have a law called Title IX, and it affected every grade school that had sports teams, high school, every college that had sports teams. And to come back and say, well, it's situational here, because someone wants to be something that they weren't born, doesn't make them what they weren't born. And I'm not being critical of them. They can be what they want to be, but that shouldn't preclude or override the laws that are specific to gender.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get to infringe on everybody else's rights. Like the thing that I always found amazing was this conceit with the pronouns. That they think, oh, I'm going to just tell you how you must use the English language to me. You can't just call me he or she. I'm going to demand you call me Z and they, and like that's okay. That people can just be bossed around like that. Like that doesn't even violate rules of common courtesy.
Yeah.
But that is like this conceit that they have. Like the whole world revolves around me, and you see it with the Title IX stuff. You see it with the pronouns. It's just like I don't like who I am, therefore I can be whatever I want. And if I want to be a female or I want to be an animal or whatever else, like the insanity is almost boundless. It's so bizarre. And I think parents don't like to see it in their kids or to see their kids being affected by it. So what else we're going to talk about this week? Oh, I've got another thing I wanted to bring up. This is a bill in the state house that's been moving very quickly. And I know Shane Trejo has been sounding the alarm about this, but there's a new bill in the state house, which is to basically expand the law that allows for breathalyzers to also allow for spit tests for marijuana and like other drugs, I suppose. Which, I mean, obviously the intention here is, well, it's just like alcohol, right? When you are driving a car, you are under the presumption that you are consenting to a search, but there's some issues with this, and I'll show you. This is a petition that Shane Trejo made up, and he cites a few things. One is that these tests are not all that accurate, and another is that that there's all kinds of issues with the intoxication level. So, for example, I think I saw this in here somewhere. Yeah, the pilot program showed that 222 out of 939 positive results were proven incorrect by blood test, according to MLive. So it sounds like something that maybe a lot of discussion and debate is needed, but this bill is on the fast track. And it's interesting because the bill was sent to government operations, not to the Criminal Justice Committee or to the Transportation Committee. And usually the Government Operations Committee is where the speaker sends bills to go nowhere. It's where they send bills they don't want to see ever again, bills that never get a hearing. They send them to this committee. But every once in a while, they'll send the bill to the committee as the fast track, as a way around a committee chair for some reason, something like that. Well, this bill got introduced just 1 month ago by Julie Rogers, who last time I checked was a Democrat, and was sent to government operations. Already had a hearing, already referred to the Rules Committee, which is a whole other story. They have a Rules Committee. But that also means this bill is moving. And so it's been reported from committee with recommendation, meaning, this just happened this week, so we don't even have a roll call in the committee to see if anyone dissented yet.
The Supreme Court actually ruled on this in 2013 in Maryland versus King. It was a groundbreaking case, and it said that a person's bodily integrity is private, and that swabs, DNA, blood testing are all searches covered by the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah.
And
it's clearly it's a saliva test, so they're clearly collecting DNA. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
There are very, very specific standards that are protecting the citizens of our country against illegal search and seizure. Now, there's also, exigent consent, arrest processing. There's a whole litany of items that allow for a swab to be taken. But in this bill, they are not, that I could see, identifying the exceptions that exist and stating what those exceptions are and applying them to the Supreme Court decision from 2013. So for a Rules Committee to think that they can in the state circumvent the Supreme Court in the Fourth Amendment is pretty scary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they just try everything, and then it just dares whoever to sue them, right? And then it'll get tied up in litigation. They don't care that it's already been ruled illegal. They still try it. Just like the gun laws coming out of New York, like they just continue.
Well, they're relentless at challenging the status quo or the Constitution.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, so here's the bill summary, which they write up once the bill is getting a hearing. And yeah, there's nothing in here about any exceptions. The results will be admissible in a criminal prosecution or an administrative hearing for one or more of the following purposes, and of course to determine the validity of an arrest, which is exactly what the issue is.
Well, the court said that it's legal to take a swab after somebody has been arrested.
Yeah, but that's typically because, at that point,
I understand. So, again, I'm just trying to understand the intent of the rule or the law, and taking it under the suspicion or the consideration of arresting them is not legal.
Yeah, well, the issue I would say here too is, with respect to that, is certainly, a breathalyzer for the purpose of determining alcohol intoxication is pretty well settled science. I don't know that a spit sample for a roadside test is, and according to that news article, it has not been really sufficiently proven.
All right, the Michigan Supreme Court just ruled like smelling marijuana in a car is not reason enough to pull someone over or whatever, right? But they're gonna.
Yeah. It was preposterous for a different reason, but yeah.
But anyway, that was the Michigan Supreme Court, 6-1 Dem, right?
Yep. And so the sponsors, you've got Julie Rogers, a Democrat. Bagol, Republican, all the way down. Matt Longjohn, is that Republican? I'm not sure. He's a freshman. That might be a Democrat. I think he's a Republican, though.
I'd sure as heck like to know why the Republicans are supporting this, because at face value, it appears to be a Fourth Amendment violation.
Helena Scott's on there. Reggie Miller's on there. Democrat. So there's a couple of Democrats, but mostly Republicans are on this bill.
Jamie Green is on there. Yeah. I think they're probably just tired of weed being everywhere and people driving all high. But
I sympathize with that.
Yeah, It's
I
so
can relate. I absolutely despise all the advertising and the weed stores just everywhere. I'm as a libertarian type, I appreciate the legality of all that and the civil liberties aspect of it, but also just drives me bonkers. It's so offensive. It's everywhere.
Do you guys realize that Michigan, on a per capita basis, is the #1 consumer of weed in America?
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Within California,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah. Really sad.
Not good. Not good for us. Drugs are bad, guys. Anyway, what else were we going to talk about this week? So there's a petition at rescuemichigan.com. I might do an email about it. Shane posted this thing originally. He really wants to go out on this, and I think it might be a good thing too. Let's see what else was there. Oh, the other story I want to talk about, and so there's been some confusion about this, but there are actually now apparently 2 different proposals that have been approved for a proof of citizenship requirement, which I was actually out in Wisconsin 2 months ago, where the proof of ID, the voter ID proposal won overwhelmingly in Wisconsin. It was like 64 to 37%, hugely popular, and so that's what they're doing now. But apparently, there's been 2 separate proposals that have gotten approval. They still need to collect signatures, but they've both been approved by the Board of Canvassers. So, Patty, you know more about this than me, I guess, because you've heard that this is actually basically the same group that they have just changed their language on, I guess, essentially, and what the language would say.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, but all I can say is I don't think they're in competition with each other, but I'm still trying to understand the difference because I got the email from the newer one, right, announcing it, and I was like, hey, wait a minute, we just had an event about this.
Yeah, here's the story. Voters could see 2 nearly identical proof of citizenship measures on the ballot. Well, no, they can't. No, they can't, because they're not going to get both. They're not going to get both of these to $450,000.
Yeah. One of the 2 is going to have more funding than the other.
Yeah. Well, that's good, because the other possibility was that this was some other group that was just trying to confuse people and get people to think, oh, I've already signed and yada yada yada, which would be a very dirty tactic. But apparently, that's not the case. This is actually really the same group that there was just a. Here we go. There's got some substantive differences between their proposal and theirs that aren't super apparent, but they're important, says the person with the first group, Fred Wazolik, who you may recall was involved with the what was the proposal? The Unlock Michigan proposal. Fred Wazolik was behind that one. Well, he was their consultant, I guess you should say.
Oh, was he? Okay. So he's spokesperson for the Committee to Protect Voter Rights, was just Posthumous's thing.
According to this article, the original group, the first one.
Yeah.
How many states, voting rights is passed now in what, 7, 8, 9 states, I believe. And it was my understanding that each state had the identical bill that they presented to the voters where they passed. And that really all they were doing was inserting the different states' names. But the requirements were the same. And I wonder why.
I'd be surprised if they were truly identical, because every state's got little wrinkles and details, and whether it's a constitutional amendment versus, I mean, they couldn't possibly be identical. There's always some little.
We're talking about identification and what constitutes identification and being a citizen.
Yeah.
And I don't know that the definition for identification varies by state. Maybe it does. I would struggle with that. And certainly the
Well, I mean, the idea would be identical. Just the words are not quite perfectly the same. But your point remains right. Exactly. And these always pass overwhelmingly, because
let's keep it simple, stupid. I mean, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
it's an 80-20 issue, 85-15 issue. As people believe in voter ID.
Yeah, it's simple. And election integrity is critical.
Yeah, it was 64% had passed by in Wisconsin, hugely popular. And that was in the same election where a Democrat won the race for state Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
So it's overwhelmingly bipartisan. And the way that the Democrats have gotten these massive proposals into the Constitution, whether it was the abortion one or the voter fraud proposal, is they just make it so complicated, which normally is something that sinks a bill, but they're like, oh, it's just voting rights. And the way we can beat back some of the worst provisions is to just target the ones that are the most extreme. Like, okay, so you got abortion, in the Constitution. But what if, late-term abortion was rolled back? What if the bit about saying that children can get abortions without their parents' consent, what that was rolled back because that was actually folded into there, as was what they call they actually say in proposal 3 in 2022, I believe it was, there was an element in that proposal that said that every individual in Michigan, including children, has an individual right to sterilization. So if a child says, I want to get castrated, the parents can't stop that. That's in our Constitution now. But I bet if voters had a proposal to undo that, they'd probably go for it. Probably wouldn't want to hear about this. Probably wouldn't want to discover what was actually in proposal 3 that they were told about.
Well, they didn't believe us when we were trying to tell them back then, right? No, it's not.
Yeah. Amazing. It's amazing. So anyway, so it sounds like this group has funding. It sounds like it's only one effort. Thank God. So looking forward to that going out. Does anyone know, maybe Matt in the chat, maybe when they're going to start doing those? If they've got the approval, they're going to probably start that this summer, I'd wager. No?
They only get 180 days to collect the signatures.
Yeah, and better do it while the weather's nice. So they'll probably start right away. Well, good. That'll be a lot of fun. What else was I going to talk about? Well, I don't want to talk about federal stuff. There was a big, beautiful bill that just passed. Well, that's what Trump calls it. It just passed by one vote in the House.
One vote.
Earlier this week by one vote. A lot of spending in it. Apparently, only will increase the debt by $20 trillion over 10 years. Not a big deal, right? But somehow, some other common sense things just aren't getting done. Like, for example, auditing the Federal Reserve or banning a central bank digital currency. These are two things the Fed's been pushing. Now, think about this. Jerome Powell went out at the beginning of the year and said, Trump can't fire me. Like, we know he hates Trump. We know he wants to sabotage the Trump administration. And we know the Fed can manipulate the economy by controlling the interest rates. And yet, somehow, auditing the Federal Reserve hasn't gotten the attention of Congress when they have Republicans in the majority in both chambers, which, by the way, I think in the U.S. Senate, the Republicans passed it when they had a majority, but they didn't have it in the other chamber, and it died then. But no action on that. No action on the CBDC, which was one of the few things in the Republican platform. That hasn't gotten done. But somehow they got the spending done. It's aggravating. I tell you what, I remember a couple years ago when I told you folks that there was nobody that did more damage to our state in Congress than John James when he was the sole vote against Jim Jordan for House Speaker in Michigan. One of the 8 that broke Jim Jordan for House Speaker. The reason we got Mike Johnson instead of Jim Jordan is because of 8 Republicans, one of whom is from Michigan, and that's John James. And now, once again, now that we have another fiscally irresponsible bill, we can say, hey, thanks, John James. We could have had Jim Jordan, the budget hawk, but no, we got you. And now here we are yet again with a big, big, big deficit bill. Yeah, Chris says, Republicans moving like turtles in D.C. Tell me about it. Very frustrating. Very aggravating.
Jim Jordan voted for the big, beautiful bill, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. The only two that didn't were Thomas Massey and the other one's from Ohio too, I think.
And then who's the leader of the Freedom Caucus now? He just voted present.
Oh yeah, Andy Harris, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what
We'll see what happens. Go ahead.
It's a big, beautiful bill. If the economy gets going and we grow at over 3% GDP, we'll reduce the deficit.
Yeah. Well, and apparently in 5 years it'll reduce the deficit. And don't get me wrong, there is some good things in the bill. Biggs, thank you, Michael. Yes,
no, it's not him.
No, it's not.
It's a different Andy. Yeah, I didn't know there were 2 Andys, but yeah.
I'm gonna look it up now because
sorry,
we can't have this dispute unresolved. Andy Harris, it is Andy Harris. So anyway, there was good things in the bill, but the number one thing that we heard all about is we're going to reduce the spend. I mean, there was a saying coined by Howard Phillips: defund the left. Like, the way that the Democrats win is because they get billions and billions and billions of taxpayer dollars. They get it from all these different federal agencies. They get it from all these grants, everything from the NGO funding. All of these things is funded by U.S. taxpayers. And if you cut that off and these people lose their, and especially these bureaucrats lose their jobs, and suddenly they're not turning around their salary donating to the Democrats, the amount of political advantage the Democrats would lose if Republicans would just stop funding them would be huge. And yet they can't even pass bills to make permanent the Doge cuts. Yeah. And now what's happened? Elon Musk
certainly was the first step in identifying it. And now it's up to the citizens because Doge has zero legislative power.
It's up to Congress.
It goes to Congress. Congress has to decide, are they going to pull up their pants and act like big boys and get the job done that the citizens want, or are they going to ignore that and do what they're doing right now, which is saying they're too busy to address really the meat and bones of Doge.
Yeah, it's outrageous. And and you know, I always have this issue with these lawmakers, and at the state level too, because they always have this idea, which is, well, if I vote with my base, but not with, you know, the lobbying class, I'm not going to have the support I need to win next election. And you hear this all the time with Republicans in tough seats is, oh, I got to vote my districts. I got to vote with the Democrats. And it's like, look, first off, most of the lobbyists give an X amount of dollars to everybody and to each party, no matter what the issues are, because that's just what they do. And secondly, for the Republicans in tough districts, the Democrats aren't going to leave you alone just because you voted with them on one or two key issues. They're going to attack you for something else anyway, because that's what they do. Their job is to defeat you. All you do when you vote, and I'm thinking about people like Donnie Steele and Mark Tisdale, who will always say, I'm in a tough district, so I gotta vote with the Democrats in this. All you're doing is showing your voters that A, Democrats ain't so bad because you're voting with them, and B, you're demoralizing your own base. Like, right, the American people love Doge, the Republican base loves Doge, they love Trump, and yet somehow Congress can't bring themselves to do the things that Trump says he wants to do. They're not reining in the Fed, they're not reining in the spending. They're not, I mean, maybe they're doing a few things. They're securing the border, maybe, to some degree. That's good. But a lot of the stuff is just business as usual. And it's just bizarre to me. Like, why are we still funding the D.C. Circuit? The court that rules against Trump every single time. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a creation of Congress. Why would you fund them? Why would you give them more money to continue to kneecap this administration? But they just keep on doing it. Matt says, adding Doge cuts to the reconciliation bill violates Senate rules. I would require 60 votes. Stephen Miller tweeted out a primer about it.
Yep.
Here's the thing. Did the Democrats need 60 votes to end the filibuster for judicial nominees when Harry Reid did it? Nope. They just did it. The Democrats have said the minute we get majority in the U.S. Senate, we're killing the filibuster. So why are we waiting to let them do it?
Well, you have to be able to codify it into law. I mean, you may not like the structure of the process, but really what Congress needs to do is codify it and put it into law to restrict that spending. Now, the other side of the coin is Donald Trump's a spender. Look at his first term. He's a big spender.
Yeah.
So if he takes away the money that was being given to Democrats, that doesn't mean that the size of government goes down. In most instances, what it means is it's going to be spent somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled with this Golden Dome idea he just announced, which I thought when he was running for office, that's just like a thing you're just saying to get cheers at the events. Like, wait a second. So here's what he's talking about. He just passed. Well, he just announced we're gonna do this Golden Dome, which of course is named for the Iron Dome in Israel. The difference being, Israel has a slightly smaller perimeter than the United States does, for one thing. Also, people ain't firing missiles into the United States right now, and probably won't for a very long time. So my first thought is, okay, so obviously we don't need any kind of defense against rockets because they're not firing rockets into us from Canada and Mexico.
Canada might.
But then So Trump's new announcement is, well, actually, it's not going to be for that. It's going to be a ballistic missile defense. And it's like, well, okay, that sounds great too, except Russia and China, like who presumably are who we're using this, who we're defending against, right? The country that has these nuclear weapons, they have hypersonic nuclear weapons that can't be defeated by missiles. Like nobody on planet Earth has missiles that can intercept true hypersonics, which are like not just Mach 10, but they're maneuverable. Like we have hypersonics that are hypersonic when they're in orbit, but they don't land at hypersonic speeds. Russia has maneuverable Mach 10 missiles. Like there is no way, if we have a war with Russia or China, there's a nuclear exchange, we're all dead. That's the end, folks. We are all dead. We can nuke them, they can nuke us, and nothing can stop that from happening. That's why it's called mutually assured destruction. So how many billions and trillions of dollars are we going to spend on a ballistic missile defense system that we can't use and wouldn't work if we had to? It's just so bizarre. I don't understand it. I don't know why he's doing it. If you're thinking about rebuilding the military, okay, how about support for our troops? Maybe how about, things like that. Artillery. I've heard we're kind of short on artillery shells these days, maybe. Missile defense. I don't understand it. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what he's thinking. Someone help me.
I don't know. How much is that going to cost us too?
It's going to be another boondoggle. It'll suck up as much money as we give it, and nothing will happen. It's just bizarre. I mean, don't get me wrong. We are behind in the missile game. We should probably be developing hypersonics. But
I suspect we are.
Yeah, I hope we are.
I suspect we are.
Yeah, I mean, I still say, like, how about the border? And until that situation is gone, like, why would we spend money on anything we don't really need? Michael says, I think Iron Dome is $175 billion, and that's for a country the size of New Jersey.
Yeah, I thought it was 187 billion, Michael. So you're right in the ballpark.
Close enough, yeah. So there you go. Well, anyway, so sorry, folks. I wish I had better news in Trump world for this week. That showing up of the South African president was hilarious, though. That was great. I do love that. And I hope we see some more good things too on the front of the routing out of the deep state. There was a big purge in the National Security Council this week. That sounds promising, but we'll see where that goes. And then there was that phone call with Putin, which that's a whole episode in itself right there. So we can save that for another time. Anyway, it's almost 10 o'clock. So what else do we want to talk about? What else is going on? Is there anything else I missed? I think I covered the stuff state-wise I was going to. Talk more about, I don't know. I think we covered what we were going to say about Jocelyn Benson and Dana Nessel. So, but since we have maybe a couple minutes left, I'll show you, Kevin, since you might not be familiar with this, the lawsuit against Jocelyn Benson. This was from 2020, and I actually I made an audio recording of the entire poll worker training. And so this was the lawsuit. Hold on, let me put this up on the screen here. How do I do this? Here we go. This was literally like days before the November 2020 election. Steve Carra, who's a state representative, and Bob Cushman, who was a poll challenger, brought the suit. I put them in touch with these attorneys, Matt Gronda and Phil Ellison, fantastic attorneys. And they filed this suit asking for a preliminary injunction because there is a specialized team of professionals known as poll challengers that need to have a vital role in securing fair, lawful, and transparent elections. It's a statutory role. And what ended up happening was, let me go to the story of the case here. Hold on. There's this directive here. Right, here we go. On October 16th, the defense issued a written directive to local election officials outlining procedures. The copy of that document is attached. They directed, or at very least permitted, local officials to condition the presence of election workers wearing a face mask, and then even then, commanding that they stay within social distancing rules. These made it impossible for a poll challenger to execute their duties. And then we have this quote here from my tape. A local election official in the city of Detroit who was training poll workers rather gleefully describes how election workers are to be impeded. They have to wear a mask. They have to stay 6 feet. That's important because they can come behind your table. But if you don't have 6 feet, they can't come back there. And so they can't walk in without a party, anything on just like that. You can't on your mask. They can't either. So if they're 6 feet back, they can't actually see. Exactly. Unless they got really good vision or they brought their binoculars. And so we posted the recording of this entire thing. And Benson actually settled out of court. So here is the final order. Let me switch over to this. Hold on. Let me show you the final order, which she completely ignored. But here it is. This is the final order. There's her attorneys, stipulated final orders, and it says that they will, on October 29th, 2020, issue written guidance to the challengers of the poll watchers to be revised as follows, and here it all is. And there was indeed a violation of this order, but nothing ever happened. They were never held in contempt, and that was the end of it. So
there's no consequences.
Nope. Even if there was, you know, what are you gonna do? Redo the election, right? But that's what Jocelyn Benson has done for her entire tenure in the Secretary of State's office. Has been nothing but meddling in elections. Yeah, Barry says the governor's race is very interesting. Yep. Well, I hope we have someone better than John James to run on our side. I'll just say that much. So there you go.
So yeah,
right.
Speaking of, they had that good forum. I don't know if Kevin wants to talk about that event in Grand Rapids last Saturday at all, Kevin.
Yeah, I'd like to. Sure. We did something that, to my knowledge, has never been done before. Ryan Kelly, Garrett Soldano, and myself did a open forum on a Friday night in Grand Rapids, and we had 500 people that participated. There were 128 people in the audience, and 300 and some people on 380 people, if I'm not mistaken, on the live stream feed. And for 3 hours, we answered questions from the audience, whatever they wanted to ask. There was no speeches, there was no script, and it was really well received. On social media platforms, it's my belief that we're now looking at over 700,000 views in a week. And that keeps going up.
Fantastic.
Our plan is to expand that. And really, what we'd like the people of Michigan to be is educated in their choices. For Republicans to take back their party, for Republicans to do what the people want them to do, the people need to be educated on the person they're voting for. And it can't be an emotional decision. It needs to be factual, because politicians like to politic, and business leaders like to get results, and people that are new to government want to get results. They enter for the purest reasons. And so correspondingly, I think Michigan's at a crossroads, and I don't know if I'm going to run for governor again. I've thought about it. I'm considering it. There's no question. I think Garrett is out. I don't know that Ryan is interested in running again. But what I do want is Michigan to go in a different direction. And the only way that we have a chance is if the citizens, if the people of the state force the candidates to answer their questions honestly and then hold them to it. And look at Donald Trump. He has a checklist that he had 22 campaign promises, and he's checking them off. And it's a much different game when you say, look, I was elected to do this, and I'm living up to my promise. Ron DeSantis has done a great job in Florida.
Yeah.
He's the one that started the checklist that I'm aware of, and has lived up to every promise that he has made, every major promise. And look at the results that Florida's getting. And I think the people of Michigan should call out candidates and say, other than wanting the job, what are you actually going to do for me on these items? And it was really refreshing. Not one person got up to leave in 3 hours And
Fantastic.
we're looking forward to doing it again and sharing the results.
Excellent. Well,
Yep.
if you want to do one in Southeast Michigan, give us a ring because Patty's here in Plymouth. I'm in Washtenaw County, and we got a great group of people here too. So
yeah, I think we're looking right now. We're looking for a spot in Macomb County to do it, a spot in Oakland County to do it, and we'd like to do it up in Flint. And,
excellent.
Yeah, unscripted. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, thank you for joining us tonight. If you've got any events or anything else you want to plug, by all means, go ahead.
I'm going to speak on the 7th up in northern Michigan, and around the state. We've got several events, but this isn't the place right now to do that. Actually, look on our website for Michigan. I've got a podcast that we talk about dates and appearances called Beyond the Echo, and would invite you to watch that. We're on X, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and full episodes available. And we discuss real issues for Michigan. I like your.
Oh, I'm trying to find your website. This looks like your campaign for governor website, but that might not be the one I'm supposed to be looking at because it might be from 4 years ago.
That one is from 4 years ago, and there's still. It's Rinke for Michigan.
Oh,
and,
this is rinkeformichigan.com. Is there another one?
That's it. And Kevin Rinke, and you can get the information. We're continually posting to both.
Okay. What's your address? Or what's your website? Okay, I found you on X here.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So you're on X. Do you have a website or just the X page?
Beyond Echo.
Beyond Echo?
Beyond the Echo is
the podcast.
Find me. The podcast.
Oh, okay, I find it here. It's on Spotify?
Yep.
Gotcha. There you go. All right. So you can find Kevin Rinke at Beyond the Echo on Spotify, Kevin Rinke on X, and
on Facebook,
Twitter.
Twitter.
Yep.
Yeah, it's some pretty good content and some interesting things that I think people would be better off if they were aware of.
Fantastic.
Yep. So,
Patty, you got any events coming up?
I do.
What you got?
Plymouth Canton Republicans Club is hosting a City of Plymouth City Commission Candidate Forum on Tuesday, June 17th at the library. So that's very locally targeted, obviously. So we're looking to get, obviously people from the city of Plymouth to attend, hopefully get some new people involved. So that is on a Tuesday night at the library in Plymouth.
Cool. And that is, you are on Facebook, Plymouth Canton Republicans Club, I assume is the place to
find it. And I have a website now.
Oh, yeah.
PCRCMI.com.
Very cool. There you go. PCRCMI.com. And Washtenaw, GOPclub.com. You got our events. We've got Memorial Day Parade coming up tomorrow. Milan Community Fair will be tabling at that. And then we'll be at the Lower Perry for representative campaign kickoff. So there you go. All right. I think this will do it for us for tonight. Chris says finding candidates. Yay. All right. Also says there are now clear-cut guidelines for poll challenges, which is good. Well, yeah, but they're not using social distancing anymore. Now they got other tricks up their sleeve.
We got other tricks like,
on Rumble, Rush Edding says, good Memorial Day weekend evening. Yes, happy Memorial Day to all you guys. Hope you guys enjoy the holiday weekend and the good weather. Kevin, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been a lot of fun. And until next time, folks, as always, thanks for all you for. Oh, and Kevin, by the way, you can stand if you want. We can say our proper goodbyes after the stream ends. But other than that, for the rest of you folks watching, thank you guys for all you do for liberty. And until next time, peace.